Hi everyone, and welcome to the Okanagan Heritage Museum. My name is Allison, and today we are going to talk about one of Kelowna's oldest streets. So we are going to talk about Bernard Avenue, which is right downtown, because there's a lot of history all wrapped up in one single street. But before we do that, I do want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Seal people. And long before Bernard Avenue existed, downtown Kelowna, that place was a marshy wetland. So just think about the different types of insects and animals that would be there. Think about the different kinds of plants, so things like cattail and tule reed. And this was an area that the Seal people would use to gather resources. And along the waterfront, they would have canoes. So this one area in Kelowna had a lot of change happen once Europeans started to arrive. And I'm going to share some stories with you about a family that moved here right when those changes were getting started. So we are going to focus on the Lequime family today. So they were one of the first European families to settle here, and they contributed to what became Kelowna. Now, our story is going to start in 1852 with Eli Lequime. He was originally from France, and he went to San Francisco to try his luck with the gold rush. Now, gold panning wasn't really his thing, and he actually ended up returning to France not long after, but he came back to San Francisco only 4 years later. This time, he brought his wife, Marie, and the two of them ended up traveling north, and they arrived in Rock Creek. They ended up at a little mining camp there. And by this time, they had two young kids with them. They had Bernard and Gaston. Now, three really big things happened while they were living in Rock Creek. So the first one is that their son, Gaston, he unfortunately died, so he drowned in a miner's ditch when he was a really little kid. The second thing that happened is that they met Father Pandozzi. That name might sound a little familiar. So he was a French Catholic missionary who was working on establishing a French Catholic settlement here in the Okanagan, and he convinced the Lequimes to eventually move there and settle there. Now, the third thing that happened is that they had another son. They also named him Gaston. So by 1861, this mining camp is pretty empty. There's not a lot going on. So Eli and Marie pack up their belongings. They pack up Bernard and the second Gaston, and they head off from Rock Creek to the Okanagan. Now just picture, there's no highway, there's no planes. The terrain to get from Rock Creek to the Okanagan is pretty treacherous, and they made that journey on foot and with the help of some animals. And they also had two really young kids with them. So I think that would have been a very long and a really difficult journey to make. But they arrived here and they ended up settling in a place called Benvolin, which, if you're thinking about from downtown, it's about 10 kilometers away from the waterfront. And they started their new life. So Eli was super busy. He wore many different hats. He had a small general store, he ran a little post office, he traded, he raised cattle, and he and Marie also had two more kids. So they had Aminad, a daughter, and Leon, another son. So life is busy, they're getting settled here. And then unfortunately, a little while later, the second Gaston's son also passed away. It was in his mid-20s, and he died as a result of an accident when he was riding. So now we have three Lequime children left. So we have Bernard, who's right here. Bernard. And we have Aminad, the daughter, right there. And unfortunately, we don't have any photographs of Leon, but we do have a photograph of the second Gaston son that I can show you. Now, the two brothers, Bernard and Leon, they're a little more well-known than their sister. So the two of them actually laid the town site of Kelowna. So the area that's now downtown, that's more or less where the original town site was. And they also opened up a general store. So they picked this place right by the water for a few different reasons. So it was right along the lake. So there's a lot of traffic happening there because people were traveling by boat. And at the north end of the lake, over at Okanagan Landing, there was the connection to the Canadian Pacific Railway. So if you're at a place where there's a lot of traffic going by, it's easy to unload goods. It's also easy for people to visit and shop. So people like convenience. We haven't really changed that much in that regard. And just to paint a picture of what this new town site looked like, I've got a picture that was taken in 1895. So that's 3 years after the town site was established. You can see that there's a dirt road. So this is Bernard Avenue. There's a few wooden buildings. And then this store right here was their general store. And I've got a close-up of that one as well. So you can see it's a nice big building. And then eventually, Kelowna's expanding, there's more people living here, and the brothers were able to build a new general store, this time out of stone and brick. So this is actually where Fresh Slice Pizza is today, and this wall that's right here, you can actually still see it. So it's one of the oldest walls in Kelowna. So this is right in that little alleyway. There's patio lights hanging there now, right beside that pizza store. Now, we're going to have a look at one of our displays here at the museum to get a sense of what would have been sold in that general store. So at the general store, you'd be able to find all kinds of different things, shoes for the whole family, and there would also be different kinds of utensils and tools. Of course, nice things to dress you up a little bit with watches and different kinds of jewelry as well. And of course, any little household items that you might need along the way. So now that we've seen some items from the general store, why don't we try and figure out how much those items would cost? So our amazing camera woman Mal is going to play a little game, kind of like The Price is Right with me. So I have a picture of an ad that was in a newspaper in 1912, and the Lequime General Store is having a sale. So I'm going to tell Mal the price of a few different items, and she needs to figure out what the sale price is. All right, so we're gonna get started with women's sweater coats. They are originally $2.25. What's the sale price?
$1.80.
$1.80, super close. It's actually less. It's $1.50. Yeah, pretty good deal. What about men's suits? They're originally $20 to $25.
I'm gonna have to go with $16.25.
Ooh, also super close. It's still less than that. It's $14.75.
Wow.
You can't get a suit for that price anymore. And ladies' boots. They're originally $5. What's the sale price?
$2.75.
Whoa, it's actually more than that. So we've got $3.50. So things were definitely a little less expensive back then compared to what we pay now. So with most of the stories that we focused on so far, we've mostly talked about the men's side of things. And that's because history tends to remember their experiences more, name things after them a little bit more. Okay, so let's even think about the streets that we have in downtown Kelowna. We have Bernard Avenue, we have Leon Avenue, we do have a Gaston Avenue, and Highway 97, which is also Harvey Avenue, that used to be Eli Avenue. So we have all of the Lequime men represented, but we don't have a street named after Marie or Aminad, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that one day that can change. And with Marie, we also have no confirmed photographs of her, so we don't even know what she looked like. But there was one thing that Marie was very memorable for, And she had one of these. It was very, very special. I've been told it looks like a key, kind of like a corkscrew, or a bottle opener. Kind of a strange little object. I'll give you a clue about what it is. So I've got another newspaper article, and it says, Kelowna was over 100 years ahead of the times back in the 1860s when Mrs. Eli Lequime was the first lady dentist. She owned the only tooth extractor in the area. So if you had a sad tooth, you had to go and visit Marie Lequime. So this part would wrap around whatever tooth was bothering you, and this would tighten around it, and then it would get pulled out. And for Aminad, we know very little about her. We know that by the late 1880s, she ended up moving down to California. She moved there with her father and her niece Dorothy, and a little while later, her mom also joined them. Now, Dorothy Lequime also has a really interesting connection to downtown Kelowna. So she is the daughter of the second Gaston's son, and when he passed away, she inherited some land that he owned in downtown Kelowna. And then later on, once we became incorporated as a city, the city really wanted to buy that land from Dorothy. Now, where is a place in downtown Kelowna that takes up a lot of space that people really like to visit? What do we think? It's City Park. Now, she didn't own all of the land that made up City Park. She just owned a piece of it. But I think it's really interesting that we've got one of the Lequime ladies having a connection to a big open space that's now enjoyed by so many people. So thank you for tuning in and for watching our video about the Lequime family and about Bernard Avenue. I wasn't lying when I told you that there was a lot of history all wrapped up in one street. Bye!